Welcome to the Hormone Hub, your go-to source for the conversations every woman in her 40s and 50s needs to have. I'm your host, Kylie Pinwell, your nutritionist helping you navigate your way through perimenopause, menopause and beyond so you can say goodbye to the endless fatigue, unexplained weight gain, hot flushes, PMS, mood changes and more that come on this hormonal roller coaster. If you missed the memo or think this is only for women of a certain age, ladies, it's time to think again. Now sit back, relax and enjoy the show. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my latest episodes, which are released every week. Share it with your friends, your sweaty sisters. The more we talk, the more we help each other. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hormone Hub. Now, today's episode, and I know I say this every week, is going to be amazing because I have a very special guest, Mel Kettle, with us. Now, Mel and I met, we were introduced by a mutual friend who said, you two have to meet each other. So I stalked Mel a little bit on social media, as you do, as we can. And it turned out that Mel and I had a lot of similarities. So we agreed to meet for lunch and pretty much hit it off straight away. So Mel is an internationally recognised coach, mentor, speaker, facilitator and author. She works at the intersection of communication and leadership to help senior executives, boards, business owners and leaders create real connection and sustained engagement so they can lead themselves, lead aligned teams and lead cultures of belongings. Now, we'll explain what all of that means in a second. Now, Mel's also committed to helping women and organisations better understand the impact that menopause has in the workplace. So welcome, Mel. I am so excited to have you here on the podcast today.
Thanks so much, Kylie. It's so good to be here. Yes. And I will add that in all of your stalking, you didn't realise that we live very close to each other until we spoke. And I messaged you and said, well, do you want to meet for lunch? Because I'm at Caloundra.
Exactly. And that was the funny thing of it. So Mel and I, just to sort of give you a short synopsis of all of our similarities or commonalities. So we both started in Sydney. We both went to university in Canberra. We were both exchange students overseas with Rotary when we finished high school.
And I think maybe that was the same year as well. I was 88.
I was 89. So I was a year behind. I finished year 12 in 88 and then went in 89. Yeah. Then we both ended up in Canberra at university. Then we both eventually sort of moved to Queensland. We both married Sean's and we now live about half an hour away from each other.
And we have loads of mutual friends, we're discovering.
Yes, exactly. Lots of mutual friends. And I'm very, very glad that we made the communication. And we both have a love of delicious food. So
we do.
So welcome, Mel. It is so good to have you here. And today, I really sort of want to jump in, and the reason we were connected by this friend in the first place was because of your role and what you're doing with women going through menopause in the organisation or in organisations. So do you want to tell us sort of how did that kind of come about?
That's a really good question. I started thinking about menopause when I started going through perimenopause in my probably early 40s and went to the doctor and said, I've got all these things going on. I came off the pill, gained 10 kilos in 10 weeks, was forgetting everything and not sleeping and having hot flushes. And she said to me, oh, you're too young. Come back when you're 52 and I'll give you some HRT.
Oh, my God.
I know. And 52 was 9 years away. And I just went, you've got to be freaking kidding. I'm not putting up with this for 9 years. And so I went away and did a bit of research and discovered that, okay, I did have perimenopause, struggled through. Nobody was talking about it. This was about 10 years ago. And went through it and became postmenopausal at about 47, 48. Yeah. And about that time, I was starting to think about the work that I was doing and the other people that it was impacting. And I didn't think too much of it until I started to research for my current book, which is called Fully Connected, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And when I was researching the book, I was looking at what are the things that prevent us, men and women, from prioritizing themselves in the workplace and at home. And there were the reasons that you would expect of we're trying to do more with less. COVID was happening, and so nobody knew what was happening next. Workplaces were becoming more pressured, but underpinning all of that was with women in their 40s and 50s was menopause. And I thought there's a real issue here because so many women are going through all of the physical and emotional symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. Nobody's talking about it. A lot of my friends had no idea what was happening to them. And so if we're not talking about it with our friendship circles and the people who we know, love and trust the most, chances are nobody's talking about it at work, and it's having a massive impact on how we work and the decisions we make at work. And so that was what started my interest in having conversations about it in workplaces. And I started out just by asking my clients who were women of the age and found out that nobody was talking about it. So I started running a workshop called Why We Need to Talk About Menopause at Work. And it's just taken off.
And that's it. And I speak to women, all the time who are, and these are women who, range from stay-at-home mums who just feel like they're losing their shit, to women in, on boards and, in, senior management positions who, just feel like the rug has been pulled out from under them. And as you said, it's the physical symptoms are one thing. You've got the emotional and then also the mental symptoms. So, the brain fog and that lack of concentration and, as well as, I remember this conversation with one woman, and it was one of the big banks, and she was, a senior director, and she's sitting in a room full of men. And she said that there wasn't much airflow. She said she started to feel nauseous. Then she said she felt like hot. She said she could feel that burning coming from within. And it was the first time she'd had a hot flush. And she didn't realize what was happening to her at the time. And she said, and then she just started like with this all over body sweating. And she said she didn't want to kind of freak out because they were in the middle of this, really important meeting. But she said, she couldn't listen. She couldn't hear anything. She couldn't, and she just thought she was having a heart attack and was about to die. And she didn't actually realize because, she was too young. She was, I think, 45 at the time, too young to be going through menopause. So she had no association with what was happening with her body and menopause, but then also how to deal with it at work in a room full of, her equals. And she sort of said, she didn't want to sort of, oh, excuse me, I might be having a hot flush. Like where do you go with that conversation?
Yeah, exactly. And I know I've certainly had those experiences as well. And, I've been in business development meetings with prospective clients, and I can absolutely guarantee I've lost the business because I've had a hot flush and my meeting's been with a man in his 30s or 40s who's been embarrassed. And I've said, I'm really sorry, I'm having a hot flush, and I've just been sweating profusely. And they've clearly gone, she's going to be all too hard to work with. It's been, and some of them never returned phone calls or emails again. And I've never been ghosted romantically, but I've been ghosted professionally a lot. And I know it was because of the menopause symptoms. The other thing, I think, the other experience I had ages ago, I was on a stage at a conference, and a big part of my business pre-COVID was speaking at conferences. And I was on stage giving the closing keynote with about 400 people in the room. And I suddenly forgot what I had to say halfway through a sentence. And I'm just on the middle of the stage with nowhere to go, thinking, shit, now what do I do? And I, walked over to the lectern, had a sip of water, collected my thoughts, looked at the slide that fortunately had a keyword that reminded me, made a joke about menobrain, and continued. And luckily, the majority of the audience were women in their 40s and 50s, and they all laughed. And so they could relate. And what was really gratifying was, A, that I got through it without any other embarrassing mishaps. But B, afterwards, the number of women who came up to me and said, I really understood what you were going through up there because I have menobrain all the time. And so thank you so much for actually mentioning it.
Yeah,
because we need to normalize it.
Yeah, for sure. And, any regular listeners of the podcast know that I lose my words on a regular basis. I'm
So
sure
do I.
Belinda, who does my editing, she just leaves it in now. She's hello, Belinda, and thank you. Yeah, well, that's right. So, and that's it. It's when we start talking about it that other women just go, "Oh, yeah, that's me too." But if we're not having those conversations, we're all kind of sitting in our own little cubicle doing our own, having our own little sweaty times. So,
yeah, exactly.
So definitely, yeah.
The other thing I just wanted to mention when you talked about your client who was quite senior in a bank, one of the biggest challenges and one of the biggest reasons I believe we need to be talking more about menopause at work is because women in their 40s and 50s are at the pinnacle of their careers. And so if we believe that we are suddenly incapable of doing our jobs or of getting that promotion or of applying for another job that might be with more responsibilities because of symptoms of menopause like brain fog, forgetfulness, and I'm not even going to start on the physical symptoms. I'm just going to think the mental ones because I think for most women they're worse. I know that it's certainly worked for me. Then we really, as organizations are losing huge opportunities to have vibrant, intelligent people doing the top jobs. And women are losing opportunities to set themselves up for the rest of their futures and their retirement by stepping away from the workplace prematurely. And, there's research that shows there's huge portions of women who either don't go for a promotion or who request for a demotion or who ask to go from full-time to part-time or some other way of reducing their hours because they don't understand what's happening or they don't believe they can cope with having a big job and menopause at the same time.
Yeah, for sure, because, loss of confidence is something that I see all the time. And, that overwhelm, the anxiety, which, is hormonally driven in a lot of instances, is something that I see with clients all the time. And it's just, sort of a phrase that I hear a lot is, it's just not who I am. Isn't me. I don't know what's going on, so that's something that I hear all the time. And and the loss of confidence is massive, and it definitely impacts, your ability to step up and say, hey, I want that job. Hey, I deserve this promotion. I deserve that pay rise. Yeah.
It impacts every aspect of your life. Whether you're at work or at home. And and for me, it was the anxiety as well. Like I'd never been an anxious person and I'm known for being really calm in a crisis. And my husband at the time was working on the Gold Coast. We were living in Brisbane and he would text me and say, I'm leaving work now. I'll see you soon. And I knew that it took between 47 and 52 minutes for him to get home. And at minute 53, if he had not walked through the front door, I would assume he was dead in a ditch from a car accident. And that is not normal.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. And, anxiety, I think, is a very real part of menopause. All right. So, Mel, would you like to tell us sort of a bit about Fully Connected? Now, there's a few things that I loved about Mel's book. So, and I think it's equally applicable for, whether you're working, professional, entrepreneur, stay-at-home mum, wherever you are. I think this is equally, it struck me that this would apply for all women. The first thing I loved about this book is it has big font. So we can read it. That was when I first opened and flipped it. I was like, oh, goody, I can read this with no glasses. So, Mel, thank you for that. But the second
Can I just say something about that? This is my second book, and when I got my first book back from the layout designer, I said to her, "Oh no, I can't read it. You need to make the font bigger." And she said, "But it's the standard font." And I went, "I don't care. My clients are in their 40s and 50s. If I can't read it, they won't be able to read it." And so when I got this one, my brief to the designer, it was a different designer for this one, was that it needs to be at least this size font. And I bought a book by another writer who wrote a book about menopause, and I can't read it because it's like 8-point font. And I'm looking at it going, even with my reading glasses on, I cannot read it.
Still can't read it. I know.
I still can't read it. So it's just been sitting on the bookshelf unused.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame. It's a real shame.
Yeah. I've got piles of books I can't read, even with glasses on. But, so Mel, I appreciate the big font. All right. But the other thing that I loved was it was so readable, and the action steps, like it was just, it's almost like a life manual, for how to start, acknowledging that you actually deserve to look after yourself. And unless you start, putting yourself first, prioritizing your own self-care, no one else is going to do that for us. So, we need to step up and, take care of ourselves. And then Mel's book is actually really practical as why we should be doing it and then what to do, which I loved.
Thank you.
So
yeah, thanks. I think one of my favourite quotes in the book is Michelle Obama. She was interviewed by Barbara Walters in the US years ago when she was First Lady. And one of the things she said was that you need to put yourself higher on your to-do list. And Barbara Walters made some comment about, isn't it selfish to put yourself first? And Michelle Obama basically said, well, if I don't put myself first and make sure that I eat the right food, get enough exercise, and, spend enough time with the people I love doing things that bring me joy, I'm going to be a pretty shit First Lady for everybody else.
Yeah.
And she didn't quite use those words, but that was the gist. Yes. And I just loved that so much because I thought if she can put herself first with all of the responsibilities that she has, and then she puts her family second, and then she puts everything else third, why can't the rest of us do that?
This Hormone Hub episode is sponsored by our free Hormone Help Call. On the call, we'll give you some clarity around what's causing your symptoms and the 3 simple steps you can start using straight away. And if you're ready to take the next step and find out how we can help you, we can talk about that too. So if you're constantly feeling tired, struggling with weight gain, PMS, mood swings, bloating, not sleeping at night, cravings, anxiety, all the things, we're ready to help. If you're ready to ditch those sugar cravings, regain your energy and shift that stubborn weight, then let us help you balance your hormones, reset your metabolism and get your confidence back so you can live the life you're meant to. The link with the details to our Hormone Help Call is in our show notes or over at kyliepinwell.com. Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. And I think we've had this messed up, or we've been fed this messed up narrative that, well, we can do it all. We can push through, we can have the shiny, the showy, flashy stuff, but, and we've kind of prioritized that over actually looking after ourselves and then
absolutely.
Family.
And,
it's important.
We can do it all, but just not all at once. There's so much research that shows multitasking is a myth in terms of efficiencies. It's the same with trying to do everything in your own world. I really believe that we need to be portioning off time to do different things. And one of those things needs to be focusing on ourselves, but also just having presence and being in the moment and taking stock of what's around you and what you've achieved and, being grateful for where you live and what you can eat. And, and one of the examples that I give, and I don't think it made it into the book, is that I had one day when I was doing a little 30-day gratitude challenge, there was one day where I was really struggling because I was really sick. And I remember thinking, okay, right now I'm just really grateful that I've got a toilet that I can throw up into, and I've got running water, and I've got a comfortable bed with a comfortable pillow so that I can have a shower, clean up, and then go and have a nap. And there's so many people in the world who don't have any of those things, who don't have toilets and who don't have clean running water and who don't have drinking water that's out of a tap that's easy to get. And sometimes we just need to go back to the very basics. And even on the worst, crappiest, times of life, remember that not everything is awful.
Yeah. That's the thing. And I think for women who are kind of like stuck in the muck of menopause, it does end. Like you do come through the other side of it too. And I think that's important to remember as well. But I think that's so true. We forget about the basics, and we forget about, because, and I think the way we speak to ourselves, plays a huge role as well. And it's just, if you're sort of in survival mode, to actually stop, like you said, take a breath and take stock of what's around you and actually go, you know what, everything's okay,
Yeah. And certainly acknowledging that when you're in survival mode, it's really hard to do those things.
Yeah.
Because I know the times that I've been in survival mode, I've just been struggling to survive. And even believing that I could even believing that I could stop for 5 minutes to think about what I could be grateful for, or, to have a cup of tea and to sit, that just wasn't an option for me when I was in survival mode, because I was so busy freaking out about everything I had to do and worrying about everything that had to be done.
Yes, yes. And look, I'll put my hand up and say I'm guilty of sliding into that. Like, I think I always do a dance with it. I'll get, and as a business owner, at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. But then, when I sort of step back and go, actually, does it matter if that doesn't get done? No, it really doesn't. Yeah. So, Mel, what do you think is the best way, like for other women who are kind of listening, who might sort of feel that it's all too overwhelming, to sort of move out of this? Like, where's a good place for them to start?
I'm a really big believer in the saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. So find someone to talk to. And for me, when I was stuck in survival mode, I had a really good GP who I went to see him about a physical thing, and he said, "How are you?" And I just cried for about half an hour. Yeah. And he said, "I feel like something else might be going on here," because I couldn't stop crying. So then it all just came out. He asked me the right questions and I just told him what was going on, and that helped hugely. Another time I rang a psychologist to make an appointment to just get some professional support around some other stuff that was happening in my life that was causing anxiety that I really didn't need. Yeah. And just the simple act of making the phone call and booking the appointment felt like I was taking charge of this problem, and that released a huge amount of anxiety and pressure from my shoulders. Yeah. So find someone to talk to about it, whether it's, and it might be a doctor, or it might be a good friend, or it might be your boss if it's a work-related problem, but find someone you trust. Yeah. If you work in an organisation that has an employee assistance program, make an appointment to go and talk to a counsellor in that program. The way those programs work in organisations that have them is that they're free for people to use because the employer pays, and the employer doesn't ever know who used it and what the problem was. Yeah. They get generic information that says this month or this quarter, this many people used it, and these were the kinds of problems that were discussed, whether it was physical or emotional or something else, whether it was work-related or family-related. There's no specifics. So you're completely protected by the program. Yeah, yeah. But I think the first thing is to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I think that's, the more we talk about it, the more we're aware of it, and the more we normalize it,
Yeah, exactly.
Because it doesn't have to be this, big monster looming in the future for a lot of women in perimenopause. It's sort of like, oh, menopause, and it doesn't need to be like that. But if we're talking to girlfriends, if we're talking to, and getting the support that we need at home, in the workplace, from friends, then, it becomes a normal conversation.
And that's a really good point. Obviously, I'm really keen on encouraging conversations in the workplace about it, but talk about it with your partner as well. Yeah. I certainly know when I started talking about it with my partner, it just made him realise that all the times I was a cranky cow, it wasn't because of anything he'd done most of the time. Yeah. And so now
there's always a few times.
I'm a few years post-pause now, but even now, if I completely lose my shit, he'll say to me, "Is it your hormones or is it something I've done?"
Yeah.
And I can respond with gritted teeth. Or is it a client or is it something else? But basically he just wants to know if it's him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good clarification. See, we're married to very smart Shawns.
We are.
Just to be clear, is it me or is it something else? Love it. All right, Mel. So thank you so much for coming on. I think this is going to be helpful for women just to sort of know that there is support available in the workplace and, also to open up the conversation in your workplace. I think that's a really big piece too. So if women, obviously, I highly recommend Mel's book, Fully Connected, to everyone. And we will put the show notes and the link to where you can buy the book I'll put the link, where are those words gone? I'll put the link to where you can buy the book in the show notes. And Mel, if people are just Googling the book, where can they find it? And I'll also put the link to Mel's website so you can find out more about Mel and the work that Mel does.
Thanks. I'd really appreciate that. You can get it through my website. If you'd like a signed hard copy, then my website, melkettle.com. Or if you want an ebook, then Book Depository, Amazon. For your international listeners, Amazon is probably the easiest place. And I'm very happy to say that it did go to #1 on Amazon when it came out. So, yay for me.
Rightfully so.
About that.
Rightfully so. I highly recommend it. Easy to read, great content, and very relevant, I think, for all women going through perimenopause and menopause. Working or not working, it's applicable to all of us. But I think it's certainly very helpful if you want to open up those workplace conversations too.
Fantastic. And there's information on my website about the masterclasses and the work that I can do in organisations to help you facilitate starting those conversations about menopause in your workplace. A few months ago, I had a call from an organisation that's 80% male, and they said, we want to talk about menopause in our workplace.
Great.
We're a financial technology company. We've got 80% of our workforce are men, but the 20% of women are all predominantly in their 40s and 50s, and we want to start raising awareness about what is happening so that they feel that they're treated as they should be in the workplace. And it was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
And it's made a huge difference to the women in that workplace.
That's great. I love hearing that. And, it's good to know that there's organisations out there proactively addressing menopause.
I feel like there's more and more starting to do that as well because, our generation, Gen X, we won't go quietly into the night has often been expected. And so there's so many women who are now unashamedly talking about their experience with perimenopause and menopause. And the more of us that talk about it, the better, particularly when it's in a workplace.
Exactly. They can run from us, but they can't hide.
Yeah. But and I know we need to wrap it up, but it doesn't just affect women, it affects everybody because think about, if you're in a work environment and there's people who have either short-term or long-term absences that aren't planned, not annual leave type absences, but because of illness or something else, then their workload still has to be done and it falls on the other team members.
Yeah.
So, the research shows that when you feel like you're engaged at work and you feel like you belong at work, you're much more likely to turn up at work and do your job properly because you're not spending time anxiously worrying about, what might happen today.
Yeah.
What negative thing could happen in the workplace to me today?
Exactly.
And
which
so
just
that
exacerbates that anxiety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means that as an organisation, there's far greater productivity. There's fewer accidents on site. There's fewer mistakes made. There's less absenteeism and presenteeism. And the bottom line of all of that is that your bottom line improves and you become a more profitable organisation.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree with you more. Oh, well, thank you, Mel. I have loved this conversation and I'm sure, there's a lot of women out there who can, listening, they're resonating and I think it doesn't matter the size of your organisation, the size of your business, if you're the business owner, it is absolutely worth, the conversation. All right. Well, thanks,
I
Mel.
agree.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Kylie.
And thank you for listening, everyone. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye now. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. You can head on over to the show notes at kyliepinwell.com/podcast where you'll find all the links and I have a little bonus surprise waiting for you. Before we go, it would mean the world to me if you head on over to your favourite podcasts channel, subscribe and leave a review. Make sure to screenshot it, DM it to me so I can thank you personally. Then stay tuned for next week's episode. Can't wait to see you then.